Leeds United's clash against Huddersfield Town has now come to a close, and it was a lot less close than it could have been. Going into this match, I was worried that Stoke would have tripped us up a little bit, but this turned out to be just the result we needed after losing to Stoke City. Ended up 4-1, lost the second half in theory, but it sort of didn't matter. And first, I'm going to dive in by looking at what sort of changed with our lineup. And first up, we were back to using direct attackers. Somerville and James came in, and they are better at carrying the ball and going directly to the defender and challenging them, taking them on. Dan James at one point knocked the ball past a defender in his own half, tried to run about 10 yards and earned them a yellow card immediately. That's the sort of stuff I was talking about in my preview. Challenge the defender, make them make the mistake, and we will be fine. And we were more than fine. We also saw a little bit of a switch at right back, with Archie Gray finally getting that rest he very, very firmly deserves. And Jamie Shackleton coming in. That surprised me a little bit, but I guess Daniel Farke sort of likes his pacey right back that's able to keep up with the winger. And it's hard to really explain. Do the job, if that makes sense. Do the attacking stuff and the defensive stuff rather than one or the other, which you sort of get with Luke Ayling. In addition to that, Glenn Kamara returned, and he replaced Ilya Gruev, who I think had a fairly weak debut, but it was hard to have a good debut in that match that we had against Stoke City. And the match began pretty well for us. There was good early pressure from Leeds. We were able to create plenty of opportunities, try and force a gap in their defence. And the first 15-20 minutes were basically us holding the ball, probing about a little bit, looking for gaps in their backline, and eventually learning that they're not a side that's going to cause us too many problems. A side that is going to sit back and try and hit us on the counter, but we have a very, very good defence and midfield, so they weren't able to do so. We always had Ampadu sitting in midfield, who was able to shut down a hell of a lot, and the two centre-backs of Strauch and Rodon were able to clean up whatever Ampadu couldn't. It works perfectly well, I think. Very, very early in the match, Joel Piroux had a goal disallowed. Easy to understand why. A flick on from Rutter, I think it was Rutter at least that headed it backwards, reached Piroux, who was about half a yard offside, something like that. It was definitely off, but it was a sign of what was to come, because we were doing really, really well in terms of creating the attacks at that point, but we were sort of missing a cutting edge. We weren't able to finish those chances off. And at this point in my note-taking, because I take them as we go through the match, I thought that we might be in a little bit more trouble than we were. I thought we were going to get in that situation where we keep having attacks, but we keep not finishing them off. Rutter will make a chance. It'll land at the feet of Dan James, and he'll have a shot, but it'll directly hit a defender. That wasn't the case, because very, very soon afterwards, it was 1-0 to us, and the goal came for Dan James. And this was potentially the nicest pre-assist I've ever seen. Ball bounces a couple of times in front of Jorginho Rutter as he takes full view of what's on the field in front of him. He looks in front, checks out his left, checks out his right, makes sure he's not getting pressed. And he launches this nice little deft ball over the top to Crescencio Somerville, who runs it half the way up the pitch, finds Dan James in a nice little through ball. Very, very simple finish. That was a very nice goal. And it was a lot nicer than the second goal that came very, very soon afterwards for Crescencio Somerville. And the note I've got for this is it the slowest Leeds goal ever? It was a very, very funky situation I sort of picked up on here, where Somerville cuts in, and normally you expect him to cut in, he'll have a shot, and it will either very, very narrowly miss or sneak inside the post. This did neither. He got the ball, cut inside, did a little bit of dribbling, and seemed to wait ages and ages, and he had a shot, and it very, very slowly trickled, and the defender didn't block it, and the goalkeeper didn't save it. And it was that perfect speed between being too slow and very easy to deal with and being too fast and losing a little bit of the accuracy. Very, very good goal, very, very clever goal, but it was very confusing. And then we got to the third, which came quite a lot from Dan James's pace. I liked the rhyme here, so I didn't get too much in terms of other notes. James' pace brings brace, in which he absolutely shot off down the right wing, waited for someone to play a nice little through ball into him. They did, and once James is up and running, you're not going to stop him. Fired it into the top corner. Fantastic. 3-0. At this point, I thought we can just canter home. It's nice, we'll just chill. But we didn't, because Rutter did even more creativity, where he played a nice 1-2 with Sam Byram over on the left wing, bombed down the flank, cut inside a little bit, and played it directly to Crescencio Somerville, who slotted it into the corner again. That was half-time. And at that point, we're 4-0 up, and we don't really have that much to worry about or think about in the slightest. We can just chill. And that is absolutely what we did in the second half. The first thing I noted that was the substitutions. Byram and Somerville coming off are both players that we have discussed having fairly long-term injuries that will need long-term treatment, that need looking after, and can't play 3 weeks. 3 weeks? 3 games a week necessarily. That means that, especially with Leicester coming up this Friday, Somerville hasn't had to have another half an hour of football. Byram hasn't had to have another half an hour of football. The recovery times will be much shorter. They can get into training sooner, and we can make sure that those injuries don't get worse ahead of, and I don't know if it's overdramatic, but ahead of what could be the biggest match of the season. Beating Leicester would be huge. It would be a massive statement of intent, and keeping these players fit for it is ideal. Same happened for Dan James later in the half when we took him off. I think that was a matter of sort of protecting him from any potential injuries, and the same for Rutter. That Rutter, James, Somerville trio is potentially the most creative 3 players in the division, with Piru able to finish the chances, and those 3 also perfectly able to score, but also putting chances on a plate for one another. Having them fit for the match later in the week is more important than anything, in my opinion. Even more important than what was, sadly, the loss of a clean sheet. This was a very, very weird one. It's a shot that came at Meslier that he wasn't quite able to save. My thinking is, and although I've only seen it on LUTV, so I wasn't able to properly watch the shot's trajectory, I think it moved fairly late because the air being incredibly moist, I've goal kept to myself a lot of the time, and a really firmly hit shot in humid, moist air moves around like a absolute bastard. And the fact that he had his hands ready and it still hit him in the shoulder tells me that it's moved a little bit. Shackleton accidentally kept their player onside, so it was a goal in the end, but I don't think it mattered too much at the end of the day. Would have been nice to have a clean sheet, but if you want to look at it from an accounting point of view, we don't need to pay the clean sheet bonuses this week. Yeah, and then the game sort of petered out towards the end. Patrick Bamford came on, had a couple of opportunities, didn't do much with it, but I really liked his work rate. Again, he was able to track back really well. 100% sure that if we got a penalty, he wouldn't have been the one taking it. Yeah, there's not much to say about the rest of the match. Huddersfield, after scoring a goal, were just content to sit in and let us come at them. We were content to say, look, we're 4-1 up. We don't really need to overcommit and lose anything else in this game. And the game sort of slowly came to a close in a weirdly satisfying way. That was the general gist of the match. Let me know what you thought about it down below in the comments. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe. You can also become a channel member. That is massively appreciated if you're able to. A couple of quid a month helps keep the channel running. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the match, hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you later.